who oppose our master shall fall.
Back in 2006, gamers were introduced to one of the best co-op superhero games ever, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Then in 2009, we got the sequel, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, which adapted the classic Civil War storyline from the comics. Now, over 10 years later, we've got Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, made by a completely different company and exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. For better or worse, Team Ninja's Ultimate Alliance 3 feels like it should have come out 10 years ago. Its combat is very simple and lacks any real depth overall, but that's not to say it's not a whole lot of fun. Being so simple makes it accessible to anyone, which makes it one of the best co-op experiences on the Nintendo Switch. The cartoony art style echoes the friendly and accessible nature of the story and gameplay, unlike its more realistic, slightly more mature and sophisticated predecessors, making it feel right at home with Nintendo. The game is an isometric co-op superhero brawler that's great fun alone, but undeniably at its best when you're with your own team at home or online. The gameplay is effectively the same it's always been. Players build a team of 4 heroes from different Marvel franchises, including the Avengers, the X-Men, the Defenders, and more. Every character gets a simple light and heavy attack, an aerial attack, and 4 unlockable special moves. All characters start with at least one special, then unlock new ones at levels 10, 15, and 20. These moves are the major form of progression in the game, which encourages you to play as several different teams of heroes to unlock everyone's moves. Different specific teams also gain different stat buffs. Choosing all X-Men will give you a different stat bonus compared to all female characters. However, the further you go through the game, the clearer it becomes that if you found your perfect team already, it's best just to stay with them rather than experimenting. There are some pretty tough bosses in the game that you'll come to quite suddenly, so you'll need to have your strongest and highest level characters there so that you're not under-leveled. The game is pretty easy up to a certain point, and that point for me was the fight with Doctor Strange.
Who am I to judge?
I like to swap out my characters regularly rather than just playing as the same team over and over, but that meant even my best heroes were severely under-leveled, so I had to go away and grind in the Infinity Trials mode. Infinity Trials come as a welcome addition and function as challenge modes where you can unlock points to spend on color swap skins and new upgrades. On a side note, it is a shame that the alternate costumes are just recolors, but apparently more are coming in the form of free DLC in 2020, along with Colossus and Cyclops as playable characters next month. Back to the bosses, they don't really require much strategy most of the time, and usually boil down to just chipping away at their stagger meter and health bar while dodging. Speaking of the stagger bar, this usually refills frustratingly quickly, so as soon as you make some progress in a battle, you have very little time to deal any significant damage. Often, by the time you've triggered your most powerful move, known as an extreme attack, the bar has already refilled before your character has even finished announcing themselves.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe it.
These attacks are usually screen-filling moves which deal massive damage over a wide area and can be fired simultaneously with your team members to really cause havoc. However, these moves don't actually work together or complement each other and just do their own thing at the same time. This is different to Ultimate Alliance 2's fusion moves, which all involve 2 characters using their moves together, such as Iron Man blasting a laser at Captain America's shield and ricocheting energy all over the stage. In Ultimate Alliance 3, there are synergy moves which are similar to fusion attacks but aren't half as cool. These are triggered when 2 characters use certain special moves at the same time and deal increased damage. These are effective in combat, but the screen is too chaotic and filled with particle effects and oversized damage icons to really see exactly what's happening. Damage numbers can be switched off entirely, but I'd rather they were just less intrusive. Captain America and Iron Man have a synergy move which is similar to their Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 fusion move, but it's almost impossible to see because the screen is often too full of explosions, which is a particular problem in handheld mode which can cause the frame rate to plummet. While these moves are powerful, it would be nice to actually see how they're acting together, if at all. Fusion attacks were one of the highlights of Ultimate Alliance 2 because the game made sure you knew exactly what you were doing and who was doing it, making it feel much more like a proper superhero moment. If Storm formed a tornado, Iceman could fill it with ice spikes to cause area damage, or the Human Torch could turn it into a vortex of fire and incinerate everything in sight. None of the moves here are anywhere near as recognizable as they were in the past, and those which can be seen are very difficult to make out because using them is like setting off a flashbang right next to your head. For a game that places so much emphasis on the individual powers looking spectacular, it seems backwards to not actually see them under all the lights and noise. However, all of your special moves can become synergy attacks with another character, so at least you have options of what flavor of explosive carnage you'd like to fill your screen. When used individually, these moves are super fun, fit the characters very well, and look really impressive. A personal favorite of mine is Cap's shield strike ability, where he throws his shields and it bounces off various enemies doing decent damage to each one from afar. Combine that with the right strength buffs and fully upgrade it and you're good to go. The characters altogether are very solid, albeit fairly shallow. For fans familiar with just the MCU versions of these characters, there will be some new faces, but nothing too obscure. Although, who the hell is Elsa Bloodstone? But we did get the always incredible Nolan North back as Deadpool, so that's always a win.
I see this as an absolute win.
Now be honest. I'm not the only one with a little bit of shit in their pants right now, am I?
One of the biggest improvements that Ultimate Alliance 2 made over the originals was that the characters had more character. The heroes here are adapted very well from the source material. Wolverine sounds like Wolverine and Thor sounds like Thor, but the story never gives anyone any individual moments to shine beyond their flashy entrances. That said, I do love the character cards that give you fun facts about who the characters are and how they fit into things, and they happen constantly throughout the story as new heroes and villains are introduced. The story itself is less of a compelling, serious narrative and more of a vehicle for just meeting and unlocking new characters to play as. While that isn't necessarily a bad thing, if you are hoping for a story with a bit more going on, then you might be better off sticking with the first two games. And there is still no payoff for that cliffhanger ending from the first one with Galactus.
Such insignificant creatures. They dare steal from Galactus. For that, I will destroy their planet.
The game's story borrows heavily from the recent Avengers Infinity War and Endgame movies, as well as the wider MCU, so it's treading a lot of familiar ground. As with all superhero media, this makes for plenty of fun Easter eggs and references to dig out and uncover. For superhero fans, it's not the story itself that's exciting here because it's one we've all seen before. It's how they introduce all the new characters in cool ways. When the hero's adventure takes them to Wakanda, all you're waiting for is that moment when Black Panther finally shows up and joins your team so you can kick ass with his vibranium suit and claws. On the whole, the story isn't bad, it's just not particularly strong or original, but it seems like it's not really trying to be either. It has a great sense of humor and is very self-aware. One joke in particular had me really cracking up where Daredevil makes a clear reference to the excellent Netflix series.
I do my best fighting in hallways.
The game's only goal is to frequently throw new characters and new abilities at you and just let you have fun with them, and in that regard it absolutely succeeds. But one area where the game doesn't succeed at all and falls faster than Mjolnir is the camera. Isometric games, and particularly chaotic brawlers like this, often have camera trouble, but this is just terrible. It constantly gets caught on things and fails to trigger a perspective shift when it's supposed to. Even the new heroic camera, which focuses on just your character, still has issues. This is an even bigger problem in co-op when both players are on opposite sides of the screen, and that is on top of the overabundance of energy blasts and fire, making understanding what's going on and where you are really frustrating. Despite being a fun and mostly easy co-op experience, this new entry to the franchise strips away many of the things which made the previous games a bit more interesting. Ultimate Alliance 3 is light on the RPG mechanics, with little more than character stats, leveling up, and equipping stat buffs with crystals. While you can speak to some other characters in the game, there are no dialogue choices which were present in the past, although they never had an impactful outcome. Also, in the first game, you had side quests which you can do which were optional, and then at the very end it would give you a glimpse into the future of what happened whether or not you did or didn't act. For instance, the choice whether you want to save Jean Grey or Nightcrawler, and then having the repercussions unfold. That wasn't particularly deep back then, but at least it was a bit more than just punching and fancy visual effects. And there's nothing anywhere near as interesting as when in Ultimate Alliance 2 players had to decide whether or not they wanted to be on Team Cap or Team Iron Man, and then completely locking off access to the characters on the other side, which meant it was a really interesting choice to make. The shallow nature of the combat, story, and mechanics makes for an experience that could have been so much more if it wanted to be, but it ends up feeling lesser than its predecessors by comparison. The game plays it very safe. On one hand, that makes it loyal to the characters it's based on, but on the other hand, it means the game doesn't take the player anywhere they've not been before or challenge them in any meaningful way. As I've already said, the game is very fun, especially in multiplayer. It's just the lack of depth in any aspect of the game that leaves something to be desired, and it feels like a stripped back version of the previous ones. Ultimately, pun intended, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is a good game, but I wouldn't call it great. It's an easy to pick up co-op brawler based off one of the most successful and popular properties around right now. Ultimate Alliance 3 is for those fans who love all things Marvel, and there's something here for anyone to enjoy. Yet I think that leaves it feeling more like a master of none. Fans of the previous games may be let down by some of the steps the game takes back rather than forward, but the core gameplay experience is still very much intact if you can get over that god-awful camera. Make no mistake, this isn't an RPG-heavy dungeon crawler like Diablo. It's a colourful, explosion-filled mess of action which is certainly entertaining even if you can't quite make out exactly what it is you're doing. There's a fair amount of content here for Marvel lovers too, with a 10 to 15 hour story mode, loads of extra challenges thrown in, and dozens of characters to play as, with more coming as paid and free DLC. It's essentially the ice cream sundae of video games. Loads of ice cream and sugar with all the extras on top. You'll sure as hell enjoy it, even if it isn't the most fulfilling and nutritious meal. It's a shame that there isn't more to Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and had it come out 10 years ago, it would have felt more at home. But it's still some of the most fun I've had playing couch co-op for a while with characters I know and love. Even though it's very simple and casual, it's a greatest hits of everything Marvel, and I've had a blast. Remember to subscribe if you're new around here. If you like the content we've been making and you want to help us make it, go on over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming. You'll get early access to our podcast, as well as our Discord channel and a bunch of other stuff. We'll see you next time. I've been Henry, this has been Pretty Good Gaming. Bye for now.